IBD medication can be absolutely necessary to give you your life back. But if you're looking at how to approach this disease naturally and holistically, this is for you. Now I'm going to show you my 5 go-to holistic treatment protocols, why I truly do believe they're a better long-term solution than medication, and I'm going to give you the steps to begin addressing your bowel disease from the roots. Contrary to what your doctors told you, Crohn's and colitis are reversible. Now, I've helped hundreds of people reverse their bowel disease, and I'm here to help you do it too, because inflammation always has a root cause. We just have to find it. This is the Reversing Crohn's and Colitis Naturally podcast. Now, I do these live trainings in my Facebook group every single week and put the audios here for you to listen to. If you want to watch the video versions of these episodes, just click the link in the show notes to get access to our Facebook group and YouTube channel. And for weekly updates, information, tips, and tricks, you can sign up for our email list by clicking the link in the show notes below. Now, if you don't know me, my name is Josh Deck. I'm an IBD specialist, medical lecturer, physician consultant, and the scientific strategist and education director for the RCFCC. And today we are talking about the 5 treatment protocols, or the holistic treatment protocols for Crohn's and colitis. First things first, everything that you do through these holistic treatment protocols depends on what's causing your disease. I want to skim this without going into too much detail because we have talked about this in the past. If you haven't seen those, make sure to check back in the podcast or YouTube, wherever you're watching from. But everything you do when it comes down to getting these holistically, it has to do with understanding what's actually causing the disease. And that's how we select these holistic protocols. For example, if I give you supplements, I want to take supplements because I'm going after something that's causing your problem. If you have parasites or mold, I'm giving you supplements to go after that parasite or the mold. Otherwise, if I'm just controlling inflammation, I'm giving you plant-based medication. So you want to be very selective and specific about what we're using and why. And so here's what you need to know about IBD when you're selecting these things. And this is going to be relevant because this is the overarching umbrella that the whole conversation today is going to sit under. Okay, so there's a quick anatomy or biology, immunology lesson, if you will. So IBD, we tend to see, is Th2 and Th17 dominant. Now, I'm not going too deep down this rabbit hole, but here's what you need to know. This stands for T helper cell. There's number 2, number 17. There's many of these pathways, but these are just the immune responses. If you think about it like your immune system's like an octopus, all these different arms do a specific thing. These specific arms, Th2 and 17, do a specific thing, and they have to do with the inflammation that you're experiencing inside of your digestive system in Crohn's or your bowels and colitis. And so, picture it this way. If you have your body's like a bathtub, right? We'll use my cup analogy. There's a big odd-shaped tub. As this starts to fill up, you develop symptoms, right? And as it overflows, you now have disease. And so these pathways work together to fill this up even quicker. This is why, for example, if you have the flu with your Crohn's or colitis, it gets so much worse because the flu fills the same cup as these 2 immune pathways. So while your immune system's already inflaming your digestive system, the flu comes in and it loads these same arms of your immune system, filling it up and causing more inflammation in those areas. So that's why this is relevant to you. Okay, so this pathway, your Th2, this is going to fight pathogens like parasites. It also contributes to things like asthma, antibodies, and it's actually anti-inflammatory, but it creates a weakness in your immune system. Whereas this pathway here defends against bacteria and fungus on a mucosal level. So soft, squishy surfaces like your mouth and your colon. This is why these pathways are important to know, because everything we're going through here in a minute has to do with all of these and what we're triggering or what we're not. So we know IBD is dominant here. And so we want to make something for you or give you protocols that either counter these or balance these so you're not experiencing this level of dominance. And this is why we want to go through root causes. Once we know what's causing it, we can support you accordingly. So now that makes sense to you, if it doesn't, ask me questions. But now that that makes sense, we're going to go through the 5 treatments that we can use on a holistic level to manage some of these immune pathways to give your body the rest and relaxation that it needs here with IBD. Because let's face it, you're sick of being in flares. You're sick of being inflamed all the time. You're sick of the urgency, running to the bathroom, planning out your meals. You're sick of the symptoms, the pain, the fatigue, the headaches, the skin issues, everything that comes with it. And so these protocols are going to give you a really good way to get started on reducing these immune responses so your body can begin calming down and cooling itself. So let's get into this. The first protocol we're going to give you, treatment number 1, we're going to call it an anti-inflammatory diet. I'll just put AF diet. Anti-inflammatory diet. Now, doctors often say, well, diet doesn't matter. Eat whatever you want. They take it too far. They say, now, diet, does it cause IBD? I have seen it in very few, maybe 1 or 2% of cases, where simply fixing the diet fully reverse the disease. However, diet is part of this cup we're talking about. So if you're eating things that are also filling this cup, you're contributing to the problem. And so there are lots of good diets out there, like the SCD, or specific carbohydrate diet. And we see low FODMAP, the AID, that's the anti-inflammatory diet, or AIP, which is autoimmune paleo. There's so many different diets, but I'm going to simplify this for you. There are only 3 rules to follow while we're dealing with diets. 3 rules, that's it. Number 1, we're going to look at whole foods. Now, the spin-off to whole foods, organize and go through the EWG, that's the Environmental Working Group. And what we can do is use a Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen list. If it's on the Clean 15, just buy it wherever, it doesn't matter. If it's on the Dirty Dozen list, these are the ones I can't recommend enough, that you really go through and actually take and make sure they're either organic or avoid them. So your blueberries and strawberries. There was a study that found the average strawberry in whatever area of the States, USA, there was 14 different pesticides, which again, destroy your gut. They're toxic and cause these immune pathways to go. So whole foods, and try to get them organic if they're on the Dirty Dozen list. That's from the EWG, you can look them up. Okay, so that's the first rule, whole foods or organic where you can. The second rule, can you tolerate these foods? And here's why I say this. There's a lot of foods that are tolerated, like Cheerios and white bread, but they're not whole foods. Therefore, on some levels, they are contributing to your inflammation, and they can be causing your gut bacteria to do all kinds of crazy stuff you don't know they're doing. And so it's adding, even though it might be drops in the bucket, it is still adding water to that bucket where it can overflow. So you want to be very careful about that. So rule number 1 for food is whole foods. Number 2 is that they're tolerated, so they don't cause you active irritation. The third one, this one is very important, is low histamine. Here's why low histamine matters. And if you don't know what foods are low histamine, here's a great opportunity to utilize ChatGPT. You can download the app for free, make an account for free, use a desktop version, ask it, cut and paste a bunch of foods. Which ones of these are low histamine? Because remember we talked about your Th1, or your Th2 rather, and Th17. We talked about these immune pathways and how they're dominant in IBD. So when you have too much immune reaction, you have inflammation, you have flares, you have all these things. You get the flu, which also triggers these responses. Now you go into a flare. Happens all the time because of these immune responses. Well, histamines actually push this Th2 immune response. So they actually contribute, just like the flu. So foods like some probiotics, fermented foods, canned foods, fried foods, cured meats like sausages, and especially like deli meats, lunch meats, these things can be very high in histamine. Spinach and avocados are higher histamine foods. So if you're eating these, even though they're whole, it could still be contributing to this overreaction of your immune system, which means without realizing it, you think you're eating healthy, but you're eating problematic foods. We've had people all the time who come in are drinking bone broth, but it actually makes them worse. Well, a big reason for that is that bone broth, not meat broth, there's a difference, but the long simmered 24, 48 hour bone broth with all the collagen, that pushes histamines. It pushes this Th2 immune response. So you get these negative inflammatory reactions. So treatment number 1 is an anti-inflammatory diet. We're going whole foods. They're foods you can tolerate, and they are low histamine. And again, you can always go to ChatGPT or Google to check, are my foods low in histamine and how are they affecting me? But that's rule number 1. So first treatment, okay? Whole foods or organic where you can, if they're on the Dirty Dozen list. Tolerated foods that agree with you and low histamine. You can get foods that tolerate with you better by cooking, by skinning them, whatever you got to do, but as long as they're whole foods. Number 2, this is treatment number 2, is stress. And then we're going to put stress, we're also going to put, I'll put a little slash up here, MB, this is going to be mind-body practice. Stress and mind-body. Why? You know stress causes you to flare. Stress causes you to trigger. Why? Because it creates inflammation. It produces excess cortisol, which is inflammatory, and it can trigger again these same immune pathways. So it's contributing to that cup. It's filling it up. You're overflowing, and now you're flaring and going, why? Well, stress is a trigger. No, stress contributes to the cup that is already full. And so by working on stress reduction through things like breath work, meditation, mind-body practice, acupuncture, yoga, journaling, whatever works for you. I had a client, this might sound kind of woo-woo to somebody, but to many of you, this will make sense. She had a bunch of stuff going on in her life, a lot of stressful stuff, a lot of personal stuff. And she actually wrote it down on a journal. And she put everything down on a piece of paper and wrote it down. There's something about the pen to paper, the physical act of writing. She got it out, she took it outside and burned it. She's like, it was a total release. That physical manifestation of the writing and watching it burn, it was like releasing it. And sometimes that's a great way to do it. There's all kinds of ways. But the idea being that mind-body practice and stress reduction, they lower cortisol, lower inflammation, can actually enhance that vagus nerve response, which is almost like this horsetail. It comes from the left side of your neck, comes all the way down. This nerve, this big, thick nerve like a guitar string, it innervates into your heart, your lungs, your whole digestive system, like your stomach and intestines, all that stuff. And it's this, what we call a bidirectional pathway. So there's communication from your brain to your guts. When you're stressed, it triggers a stress response, but also from your gut back to your brain. And so when you have inflammation in here, it can cause issues which cause anxiety, or the anxiety causes issues in your gut. It goes both ways. And so by working on these practices, it can reduce this immune response, reduce the immune activity, give your body a nice break, and it can calm things down and not contribute again to those same immune pathways we talked about. That's why it's so important, this umbrella of your immune system. It all connects, okay? Let's talk about treatment number 3. The third treatment we're talking about here, the third one we're going through, is going to be specific. I'll put treatment 3. It's going to be specific supplementation. Here's why this matters. At the beginning, if you recall, I was saying there's a difference between taking plant-based medication and going after the root cause. So if you have parasites and I give you a bunch of stuff to cover your inflammation or cover your responses, we are plant-based medication. But because I don't know what things are causing your IBD specifically, there's a good chance there's layers of mold and parasites and fungus and other things. We see a lot of that 80+% of the time. But because we don't know specifically what's taking priority, the supplements I'm going to give you are going to be to control some of these immune responses, to calm the inflammation. And again, it is sort of like plant-based medication, but we're not just popping a bunch of stuff and guessing. We're actually going after this Th1 or these Th2 and Th17 immune pathways we talked about. Th2 and Th17. These same immune pathways, the stuff I'm going to give you is actually going to calm them down and even promote their counterpart, which is Th1, the one I keep slipping out of my mouth. So we're going to calm 2 and 17. These are the active ones causing your inflammation. And we're going to promote number 1, Th1, to help bring balance back to your immune system. Because think about it. If Th1, this pathway, is way down here, and your 2 and 17 are way up here, this is called immune destabilization, dysregulation, imbalance, whatever you want to call it. So it's out of balance. Our job is to bring them closer together. So we're going to calm the high ones and raise the low ones. So a lot of them are suppressed. And so one of the most common deficiencies, that's another thing we're filling in as deficiencies, that we see is vitamin D, or vitamin D3 pairs really well with vitamin K2. These can help calm some of these immune responses as well. So I'm just going to bang them out for you here in order. You can look at dosing and stuff online later. I'm not going through that today. I just want to give you the names. So vitamin D3, curcumin. Now this one, it's important to either get nano or liposomal, because curcumin by itself isn't terribly bioavailable. This means it's really hard for your body to actually use. And so if you go through and you get a nano version or a liposomal form, this can really help you actually absorb it and utilize it. Another one we can use, this got popular during COVID, is called quercetin. This can really help balance these immune responses. We're also going to go through omega-3 or PRMs. PRMs are kind of like super omega-3. They're big extracts, but this is pro-resolve mediator. That's the PRM. They really help balance things. And then, of course, a powerful antioxidant called resveratrol. I'm going to change my markers. This one's a little bit too fuzzy light here. So you got your vitamin D3, goes well with K2, nano or liposomal curcumin, quercetin, omega-3s or PRMs, that's pro-resolve mediator, and resveratrol. These can be really beneficial in calming these overactive immune responses to give your body a chance to, again, balancing itself and, again, promoting that opposite immune side. The next one we're talking about, and I want to put caution on this one, but it's really beneficial for you, number 4, of course, is probiotics. But here's what you need to know about them. Remember we talked about histamines. When we talked about meals and treatment protocol number one of my rules, it was whole foods, tolerated foods, and of course, low histamine. There are a lot of probiotics that actually produce high levels of histamines. And so we're selected, I'll give you some specific names here, but we want to go through and use some that elicit healthy immune responses. They support your gut lining. They can keep some of the bad guys at bay, and even they produce something as a byproduct called bacteriocin, which means they actually can kill off some of the bad guys, fungus and overgrowth, supporting your immune system. So there are some common high histamine ones. So again, go to ChatGPT and Google those. But the low histamine probiotics that do all these things, support the gut lining, balance the immune system, they're going to keep the bad guys at bay and crowd them out and really help your body buffer out. I'll give you some specifics. So these are long names. So we know Bifidobacterium. The two most common ones that you'll see are Bifidobacterium and Lactobacillus. These are the ones you'll see in every single probiotic blend you'll ever find. So I'm going to give you some specific names. So for Bifido, let's call it B. In Lactobacillus, we'll call it L. So B or Bifidobacterium, the ones we're going to use that are good, beneficial, and also low histamine, so they're not causing problems. The first one is called Infantis. And you have to look very carefully. I know this is sort of it's kind of like learning Latin, but these quick looks will give you a huge benefit, okay? The next one is called Longum, and the other one is Breve, if I'm pronouncing that one correctly. So these three Bifidobacterium or Bifido strains can be really beneficial to support your body and your immune responses without causing a histamine reaction. And the other one we're going to give you is going to be your L. Remember, L is Lactobacillus. These ones are Rhamnosus and what's called Plantarum. These ones can be very beneficial for all these immune responses and helping heal the gut lining. So while we're on the probiotic strain, remember, probiotics are living organisms. These are the things that live inside you, creating all kinds of good immune responses, helping your body out, giving you all kinds of benefits and doing all the good things. So we need them. They contribute to your microbiome. So there's a fifth treatment protocol that targets your microbiome directly, and it's relatively new, and it's really quite amazing what it's possible, but there's a lot of caution around it. We call this one FMT, Fecal Microbiota Transplant. It's exactly what it sounds like. Well, they'll actually take stool, that's poop, from someone else, and they will give it to you. Now they'll either freeze dry it, some will actually put it in the centrifuge and separate all the bacteria out. You can take it through capsules. There are like enemas, retention enemas. You'll kind of be face down, ass up, and you'll insert it, you'll squirt it in and let it sit. There's also what they do through colonoscopy, where you'll need GI specialists and anesthesiologists. They'll actually go in and wash all the stool out of your colon, take this bacteria or stool from a donor, and they'll actually plant it and place it inside your bowel to have it take root. It's like planting seeds. And that new fresh start has been shown it's cured cancer, Parkinson's, all kinds of stuff. Brings us back to that conversation that all diseases begin in the gut, or particularly the leaky gut. And so probiotics enhance this microbiome. FMT is a transplant. They actually take someone else's microbiome and give it to you. And again, it's capsules, they'll do enemas, or Stephen Gundry calls them crapsules, which I quite like, or they will do a colonoscopy, an implant, and actually transplant it and place it throughout your bowel. Here's the thing. It's only approved right now in the USA for recurring C. diff infections. So there are some very specific criteria around it in order to get it. Number two, it is extraordinarily dangerous if it's not certified, licensed, checked, or especially if it's DIY. There's a lot of stories out there about people going DIY, and I cannot tell you enough. Do not, please, for the love of God, do not go DIY. It can be fatal. It can kill you if you don't have the professional supervision, because you don't know what you're getting. You don't know what someone else is, even though they look healthy or seem healthy, you don't know what their immune system is holding back that is in there. You don't know what you're getting, what your body's going to react to. You don't know if they have something in there that you should not have, or something that's hidden. It can be very, very dangerous. Even what we would think is the best stool, like a hunter-gatherer tribe out in the middle of the jungle, living off the land, eating organic, they have microbes in their body that are actually toxic to us because we're not right. We don't have them in our guts, our ecosystem here. It can be a big problem. So there's a big regulation around this for a good reason. But also there's a big step that I think a lot of people miss. They'll go in, you'll spend $5,000 of treatment sometimes for anywhere from 1 to 5 or even 10 treatments you need. So it can cost tens of thousands of dollars to do FMT properly. But there's still people screwing it up, and here's why. What they're not doing, there's no prep work. So your bowels got here for a reason. Maybe it was a lifetime of antibiotics, that's one thing. But there's invasive species. There's mold and fungus and parasites and all kinds of stuff that should not be in your body. Not just in your bowels, but in your liver, in your bile ducts, your appendix, small intestines, all these other places. They're not planting this FMT. So if you're going in to get FMT without doing the prep work to remove the things that originally caused your problem, it's going to go back. Think about it. If there is a bonfire in the ground and you build a house on top of it, that house is going to burn down. And what you do, you go back and try to build a second house, FMT, and it burns down again. You go, well, why? Because you didn't put the fire out the first time. And so if you're going to go build a new house and transplant this whole new microbiome ecosystem, you have to remove the thing that burned the first ecosystem down. And a lot of people don't do that. And this is why it's so, so important. But these are my top five preferred, or favorite, I should say, holistic treatment protocols that we use for IBD. It has to go through root cause. You have to know what's driving it, and you can organize these around it. But now that you know the immune system, these Th2 or 17 pathways we call them, that are causing your immune system to go out of whack, causing this inflammation, we can create protocols around it to help fix it in the first place. So I hope that helps. Here's the thing. If you guys are looking at this and for the first time you're saying, this is making sense. For the first time, I actually understand that there's something driving my bowel disease. I don't just have to live on a lifetime of medication. I don't just need to suppress it and manage it, but I can actually get to the root. I can pull out the problem. My body can heal itself. That's what inflammation is. It's a reaction of your body trying to protect you from something that shouldn't be there. That's what inflammation is by definition. So we have to ask, what is there that shouldn't be? Once we have that, we can begin giving your body the tools and resources to heal itself. It can be that simple. That's what you want to do. So this is making sense to you for the first time. Here's how you can get help. Now, if you're on YouTube, if you're on the podcast and you're listening to this, simply check the links below. There's a button there. You can actually click, or a link there you can get into to connect with me and my team directly. You can send me an email. If you're listening to this and for the first time it's making sense and you think, I want to get help and actually find my root cause, you can do that by simply going down to the links below and connecting with me and my team. Will help you out and get you some answers as to what's causing this, and not just throw some blanket protocols at you, but get to the root, create something specific. We'll work with you every single week for 16 weeks till we can pull this out and get your body back to balance. It can be that simple. So we're going to do it now. At this time, I'm going to go to the comment section. We're going to go back to see if we have any questions. Renee had asked, is deer safe for me to eat? I have ulcerative colitis. Totally. I'm a big fan of game meats. However, we have to make sure they're thoroughly cooked. There's a misconception, I think, that game meats, wild hunted, wild caught, are more prone to parasites than farm. That's just not the case. They're everywhere. Everybody's got parasites. The question is, how much are they affecting you? So it's very important to actually make sure it's thoroughly cooked no matter what you're eating. There was a gentleman, actually, Dr. Bill Rawls. I had him on my podcast a while back. Fantastic doctor. Really enjoyed him. Wrote a great book called The Cellular Wellness Solution. And he was telling me about one of his patients that he had seen. Remembers the day he got colitis. He was out hunting, I think it was deer or elk or something, and he had the meat sitting out, and he's like, it was just a little bit off. He's like, whatever, I ate it anyway. The next day he started bleeding. He's had ulcerative colitis since, and after going through that root cause, they were able to reverse it. But we have to know that there's a lot to it. So do be careful with any meats you're consuming, but game meat, I'm a big fan because it's what you would call wild caught, organic, free range, whatever words you want to use. It's the best quality you can get, and I'm a huge fan of game meat. Vanessa says, it's very interesting as I'm sick and passed out. Well, make sure you get some help with that. If you're passing out, that's not good. You need some support there, especially if you're sick with IBD. Remember, if you're having bowel disease and you're sick, especially like a flu or a virus, they're driving the same immune pathways. So you're contributing to the same inflammatory responses you've got right now that are actively causing your bowel disease symptoms. And then you get the flu or get something else, you're sick, it pushes that even further. So it extends your symptoms, makes them worse. You have more inflammation, more illness, more everything. So this is all we got for you guys for tonight. If you need any help, make sure to reach out. You know how to do that. Make sure you reach out because it's one action, one step between you and getting help to actually reversing this thing. Looking forward to seeing you guys all soon. Thanks so much for tuning in. One of my favorite things to hear as an IBD specialist is something along the lines of, I learned more from you in 15 minutes than from my doctor in 15 years. And if this for the first time is really starting to click and it's starting to make sense, and you're going, wait a minute, this might be reversible. I think there's more that I can do. This condition came out of nowhere. It happened to me out of the blue. I was healthy for 10, 20, 30, 40 years and suddenly I wasn't, and you're telling me there's no cause. If you're understanding finally that there is a cause, that something is driving this, I want to invite you to check the link in the show notes below. Send me an email, ask a question, see if a program is a right fit for you, because I promise you, this doesn't have to be a lifelong sentence. You're not doomed to this, and IBD can be reversed.